looking bad. So we can talk about anything.
Yeah.
Oh yeah?
You read like Carl Jung,
Who's he?
some psychologist, spiritual guy.
Oh yeah?
Yeah.
Huh. What was wrong with him?
He was like hella like in his own world.
He was what?
In his own world.
Did he say hella?
Yeah.
Ah.
In his own world.
Is that like a philosophical term?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
It's kind of becoming.
Okay.
But yeah, he likes dreams a lot.
Yeah.
The meaning behind dreams, archetypes in dreams, and the unconscious mind, and stuff like that. And he liked alchemy and Gnosticism.
What's Gnosticism?
Gnosticism is like an early form of Christianity that's like now, or kind of always, for a long time, it was like, yeah, it was like one of the original.
So, yeah, this means like you don't necessarily believe in God, but you don't necessarily think there is no God.
That-
Be a God.
Oh, okay.
That is agnostic.
Oh, I thought you
Yeah.
said that.
Okay. I was like, that sounds like agnostic.
Yeah,
Okay.
Gnosticism is just like a different interpretation.
Okay.
Well, thank you for that, Anna. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, that's it.
Yeah. Okay. Anyone else?
I
Yeah.
was also going to ask about dreams, but I was going to ask about if you have an active dream life.
Active sex life, dream life. They do, yeah. So, dreams. Any other topics out there that may be of interest before we tackle Carl Jung and his teacher Sigmund Freud and dreams and yeah.
I guess I just wanted to remind you that you started to tell us a story last class about two boys in 8th century Persia.
You really don't allow things to just pass by, do you? That's why you fought today and it stays with you. Just kidding. So let's talk about dreams for just a couple of minutes. And then we'll talk about the story if I don't forget. And of course, you're there to remind me just in case I do. And we'll go from there. You don't need to take notes in this class. They're not necessary. In fact, they're useless. Dreams. I'm trying to figure out how to approach it. If I should use the philosophy of dreams that comes from the Middle East or just simplify things. And maybe I should just simplify things. I'm sorry? Yeah, it's interesting. It's just not interesting for me. گر در طلب لقمه نانی نانی گر در طلب گوهر کانی کانی. It's a long poem. I won't give you all of it. In fact, none of it from this point on. But so there are 3 different kinds of dreams, or at least 3 different platforms. that dreams come about. The first, hello, Nelly and Sue, right?
Yep.
And Dan, yes. Can I just tell you the sort of dreams I'm interested in? Yeah, and it comes from my own personal experience. It doesn't mean anything. I'm just. So I was expressing that the things that matter to me most come from my own life. I don't care what Plato said or what Middle Eastern philosophers had said. There were a couple of scientists in Texas, if I am not mistaken, and they wanted to figure out the nature of benzene, some oil. And they had sat together for many, many, many months, if not years, to try to figure out how they could put this down mathematically for all of us to understand. And so despite all of their efforts, it went nowhere until one of them, out of exhaustion, just fell asleep on the sofa and had a dream. And in the dream, it was revealed to him the structure of this particular thing they were working on. And then they, in fact, won a Nobel Prize for that. It's a very short answer to your very, very complex question, which is, you have forces coming to you from the world outside, and you have forces coming to you from your own psychic world, the tensions, the emotions, the things you think about. So there are two forces that live inside us. One that is created by everyday life, the people you encounter, the classes you take, the job you have, the customers that come by, and I suppose these days, the difficulties with your identity, sexual orientation, all those things. And our Messiah, our intellect, oftentimes comes down and wants to figure things out. Why am I so confused? Why am I so agitated? Is there a way out of this mess? And if your own assumptions, if your own belief systems don't work, if there is enough pressure inside you, and if there is enough passion, or I should say pain, we are like a boiler system. You put a pot of water on the stove, you turn the stove on, and you put the lid on, and after a while, it begins to boil. And if there is nowhere where the steam or the pressure can kind of exit the pot, it's just going to explode. Okay, and that's the system that we live in. That if there is enough pressure inside you built by a good amount of passion or pain, the only way it can express itself is through dreams. Now, you will try talking to your friends about your issues, you will try reading books about it, watching YouTubes on it, asking questions in class, regardless. Eventually, somehow, it needs to vent itself. And one of the ways it does is through dreams. Okay. Now, one of the tricks about dreams and dream interpretation is that you need someone really, really, really versed in life, whether physical life, emotional life, spiritual life, intellectual life, to come down into your life and decode, unpack what this dream means for you. You can't do it on your own because it usually, falls on your own assumptions and beliefs and biases, and they're usually no good. So dreams have to be interpreted. Now, in the Middle Eastern world, the prophet or the teacher of the dreams, it's considered to be Joseph, the guy whose father was Jacob, was in a well, rescued by a shepherd, imprisoned by the Pharaoh, becomes a slave, and then the Pharaoh has some dreams. He doesn't know what these dreams mean, but someone in the cell says to one of the guards that, listen, this guy, this kid here, he's amazing. We have dreams every single night, and he tells us what these dreams are, what they mean, and they actually come to be true. And so Joseph becomes the symbol of someone who can really interpret dreams well and accurately. And there's a reason. First, there is this beauty that lives in Joseph. And again, in the Islamic tradition, Joseph becomes symbolic for this beauty that lives inside all of us but gets lost, gets destroyed by life. Imagine you've taken this class because you're really passionate about philosophy, about reflection, about thinking, about figuring things out. And I come to class and I turn my back to you and I write information on board and I demand that you take notes. And every day after, before you guys go home, hello, there is a tiny little quiz. And you say, wait a minute, I came to this class to figure out what love is, to figure out what wisdom is. And all I do is take notes. I could have done this at home, Google, Chat GPT, without, coming out in the rain, wasting my time. And Jacob, his father, becomes a symbol for someone who desperately seeks beauty within, but can't find it at Safeway, can't find it with friends, with reading books, audiobooks, whatever the case may be, ultimately cries, so much so, and that's a symbol for being in despair, being depressed, being sad, being lonely, having lost this beauty, doesn't know where he needs to go to find it, eventually becomes blind. In other words, the five senses cease to be useful. And that's what depression is really. That you lock yourself in your room, you shut the blinds, you turn off the lights. No one can reach you, you can't reach yourself. The only thing you can do is sit there, depressed, and maybe after a while you even don't have enough tears to weep. Okay. And one of the nice things about depression, if you can use depression the right way, is that the world and its occupants and whatever the contents of the world may be, you no longer find them valuable or meaningful. So you're all alone. And that's symbolically you becoming Jacob. And instead of reading books, listening to audios, now you begin to smell. In other words, you sign up for a class, and you're sitting there waiting for this class to start. It's the first day of the class, and the instructor walks in. And the moment you see her, or him, or it, you have this feeling, this intuition, this instinctual arousal, where you say, I'm not quite sure why, but I really, really like her. They haven't even opened their mouth to say anything, but there is this connection. And symbolically, you become a Jacob, where you can't see, you can't touch, you have no idea where you're going, because again, you're blind, but you allow your nose to guide you. Okay. So, at a later time during the semester, I'll put all the stuff on the board, and you guys can kind of see the mapping, what makes a Jacob, what makes a Joseph, how dreams come about and all that. But long story short, so remember, one platform through which dreams come about are the pressures imposed upon you by everyday life. The other is when I was 18 or 19, I went to my mom's cousin's house. His name was Hussein. He had invited this couple we had never seen before. And they're sitting, and all of a sudden this new guy says, I opened a Persian store in Sacramento. It was the first Persian store. And I have a sweet tooth, so I immediately asked him if he carries Persian ice cream, and he says yes. It was this big guy with a bushy mustache. His wife was an artist. He was an author of some books. I didn't like him. He just was a little too abrasive, You ask him, how you doing? It's none of your business. Why are you asking? I was just trying to be polite, really. I don't really care about how you feel about anything. My father is a political junkie. And so at a certain point during the gathering, he said, you know, Mr. Sabzavari, speaking to my father, I have meetings in my house every Wednesday. If you guys want to come, we just talk. And we're talking about the 1980s. The Persian community is very, very small. Most of the immigrants are relatively new. We're all illegal immigrants. Life is tough for all of us. We come here with zero money. And so everybody works like has 5 or 6 or 7 different jobs. And so we start going to, I accompany my father to these gatherings. And I don't know what happens after 4, 5, 6, 7 months. We're at the car wash. I'm washing this white Honda. I look at my father and say, you know, everything that Hussein says, this guy's name was also Hussein. All the things that he says, they're true, very, very true. True, I was only a 19-year-old kid, very impressionable, confused like most 19, 20-year-olds, trying to figure out my life. And then what usually happens is you just get a guy or someone in your life who has enough power to manipulate and coerce and exploit the way you think, the way you feel. And you either have someone in your life who's a charlatan, exploits you in all the wrong ways, or you have a charlatan who exploits you in all the right ways. So I grow to like him. I mean, really, really like him. And so for the next 10 years, I go to his house 2, 3 times a week. And our gatherings start at like 4 in the afternoon and they go all the way till like 2 in the morning. And I'm sharing this story with you because for the next 10 to about 15 years, about 90% of the dreams that I would have revolved around this man. So I suppose the answer to your question is in 2 ways. You can have dreams because of the pressures created inside you by the world, or you can have dreams created by the pressure created inside you by a teacher. And I'm not talking about academic teachers. I'm talking about people mysteriously walk into your life and they do bad things to you initially, but eventually you come to realize those bad things are actually quite good. Our task, and there were 3 of us who stayed with him for about 10 years. It was me, Mehrdad, my good friend from college days, and then Hussein, who was about 20, 30 years older than I was. The 3 of us, what we had in common was that we worshiped this man, and all of our dreams revolved around him. And our task was to take our dreams to him, if he had any, and he would tell us what the dream meant. Sometimes the dreams had some very, very intimate details, and he would say, I don't really know what the dreams mean. And then the next day he would show up at the car wash. And then he would sit for the next 2 hours telling me, or perhaps other people in our gatherings, what our dreams actually meant. But he couldn't say those things in public. If there is something or someone you respect, you worship, you love, those dreams can be profoundly significant, especially if those dreams have, or the relationship you have with this person is non-physical / physical. It's kind of like when you fall in love with someone. I mean, romantic relationship, the cheesy kind. When you fall in love with someone, what usually happens is you don't look at their body as just a piece of meat. It's like a temple. You long to lay next to them. And it's not just holding hands, it's like you're holding the hands of God. It's not just kissing them. It's like the breath of God is going inside you, you see. And so when you're working with a philosophical, spiritual teacher, it's very much the same, So, yeah. Any questions in that before we, Sue, right? Yeah, please.
So in addition to your thing about dreams, there's a lot of people use different ways to interpret dreams, including things like constellations. What are your thoughts on
I think when you're young, you want a good amount of magic in your life. You become a hippie. You drop out of school and you go and live in the woods. There is nothing wrong with it. As you get a little older and you realize you're losing certain physical abilities, and you realize that life really, if you want to live it in a healthy way, in other words, if you want to sit and read a good book for 10 hours, well, you need to have some money in your pocket. You need to have a stable job. You need to kind of be emotionally stable, which means that if you're in a romantic relationship, the people you're around with or you're in a relationship with, they also need to be stable so they don't make a complete mess of your life. Because every time you go home, it's going to be chaotic. And that chaos is going to occupy a good amount of brain space. So just in case you want to sit and read Harry Potter, every 2 minutes you realize, well, the image of your companion is entering into your consciousness and it's disrupting your pleasure of continuing to read the book. So initially, because you don't really understand life too well, you have no problem walking into the woods and living there for 2, 3, 4, 5, 10 years. Or going into the tarot cards or doing astrology, and all of which I was also interested when I was very, very young. As you gain a bit more maturity, hopefully, you realize that you're no longer interested in dreams. You're no longer interested in what the stars are telling you about you and your companion's life. What you really are after is you really want to understand. You want to understand why all of a sudden your mood changes. You want to understand why you've chosen to be with this person without referring to tarot cards. Without going and reading the books written by P.D. Auspinski and what he has to say about tarot cards. So there are, I think, 2 stages in human life. And I'm not quite sure how you get to a place where you say, I'm done being a hippie. I really know I'm in the business of understanding. It's kind of like the beautiful story that comes from the Eastern tradition, the Buddha's life. He fasts, he prays, he meditates, and there comes a point where he says, I'm really not interested in any of those things. I just want to understand why people suffer, period. And he approaches it in a very, very scientific way. There is no God, there is no soul, there are no spirits. He really wants to understand. And the way he understands is by examining, well, what makes us tick? It's desires. We have desires. How do they come about? And once you understand those things, you realize, well, you don't really need dreams. You don't really need tarot cards. You don't really need books. All you need is your ability to pay attention to things. That's all. So is there a stage in your life where you're profoundly interested in dreams and tarots and those things? Absolutely. Are they good? Yeah. They will serve you well for that particular time. Hopefully you will graduate and you will leave those things behind and you will pursue bigger and better things that help you understand things. Instead of meeting someone at a coffee shop and immediately going home and looking at your tarot cards to see what the stars have plans for you, you say, all right, you know what? Let me kind of Google his background. Let me ask him some questions. And now you pay attention to factual things. So, anyone else? Anna.
I remember.
Carl Jung is no good.
Okay. Well, yeah,
Yeah. By the way, just in case those of you who are interested in Carl Jung and Sigmund Freud, there was a discovery of one of Jung's books, the Red Book. When it first came out, it was like $200. It's gigantic, Anyway, it's no good. Yeah, go ahead.
I remember last year, either you or the sub that was in for a while was talking about the 2 forms of power through persuasion and control. And I was just wondering about that. I want my memory refreshed on that concept.
I don't want to talk about Niccolo Machiavelli, and I don't want to talk about Plato's Politics or Aristotle's or Jean-Jacques Rousseau's or Derrida's, none of those people. Hello, Moto. So Can we just simplify things?
Yeah.
You're what, 18?
Yeah.
So you're 18. You've just entered life. Now, you may assume that you have a good amount of power. And you may. I'm 61, 62, almost. You're a student. I'm the instructor. Who reads your essays, Anna? I do, of course. Who gives you a grade? I do. Who holds your future in his hand? I do. So, and this is also true in any relationship. People don't love equally. In other words, if you and I were to be in a relationship, hypothetically speaking, I would either love you a bit more or you would love me a bit more, which means that the person who loves a bit more has less power. If I love you less, I have more power over you, which means that you'll be more submissive. Which means that if I tell you, Anna, please take out the garbage, because you love me more, and one of the things that love does is that you desire to please me, you will take all the garbage in the house to the trash bin. Okay? Now, like anything else in life, power is like any tools out there. In the hands of someone who knows what this power could be used for productively, that would benefit both you and I, let's just say, that tool would be used profitably. In other words, it would benefit you and me. If on the other hand, you're talking about power in the hands of an incompetent bully, then it would not be used appropriately. So in this scenario, let's say you come to my office, and let's say you begin to talk about your life, which I'm not really interested. Okay. But let's say, even though I'm not interested in your life, I am interested in something that you have, and let's just call it presence. And I'm not quite sure how else to describe it. There is something about you that attracts me. I don't know what it is. It's something that my good friend who's now dead, Friedrich Nietzsche, had argued. Have you seen Nietzsche's picture, his face? He's a very, very so he's got this bushy mustache.
I like it. It looks good. It works for me.
So he's got this bushy mustache. One goes a mile this way and the other goes a mile this way. And yeah, you like him in the picture. Imagine if he was your boyfriend, and every time you want to kiss him, you would have like a pound of hair in your mouth. Now, someone asked him, Fred, or Frederick, or Nietzsche, why don't you trim your mustache or shave it all together? And he said something interesting. He said, I don't know if I've been cursed or I've been blessed. I have these eyes, and when someone gazes at my eyes, they have the ability to see my soul, the despair, the reflection, the loneliness. And the truth is, that's my private life. That's my soul. Not everyone should have access to it. It's only reserved for those with whom I'm profoundly intimate, my friends. And so, to distract people from looking into my eyes and seeing my soul, I grow this mustache. So instead of them looking at me saying, why are you so sad? They say, oh, you have a beautiful mustache. How long did it take you to grow? What kind of oil do you use? What kind of shampoo do you use? And so that is what I mean by presence, that there is just something about some people, Now, it may be that I'm attracted to something about you that remains a mystery for me, and maybe for you, and maybe for other people. It could easily be destroyed the moment you open your mouth and speak English in all the wrong ways. or your body language is just foul, or you don't dress well, or whatever the case may be. You know, so just because there is something attractive about you, it doesn't mean it's going to be lasting. You have also sorts of components to either protect it or just destroy it. Okay. Now, let's say I don't like anything about your life, especially the way you express it, but I like you. So just before the class ends, I say, Anna, why don't you stay after class? Let's have a chat for 10 minutes. Power over you. What are you going to say? You're going to flip me off? Of course not. You're going to say, yes, professor. Say, listen, I got to run to the office. Why don't you walk with me to the office? Okay. Now, let's just say you have a class at 10:45 or 10:30. But your grade depends on it, Anna. So while you're sitting in the office, I say, how about a cup of coffee? So, okay. You sit there, and you and I talk. Have I manipulated you? Absolutely. Does my power persuade you? Yeah. Do you feel exploited? Yeah. Do you live in conflict? I have a class I should go, but I also want to pass this class. Yeah. Do you have to kind of just deal with this conflict in a silent way? Yeah. I'll turn off the lights to the office. I have a big window, so there's still a good amount of light. I like piano music, so that's in the background. I light some candles. Just kidding. And you and I sit. How do you like the class, I ask you? Now, you may think this is just a casual question. It's not. I'm using a canon, a measurement, to figure out where exactly you are. And just in case I hear you say positive things about the class, it's making you think and this and that, I'm going to give you a book to take home. And then when you come back on Thursday, I'll ask, so did you get the book? Did you read the book? If so, how many pages? That shows me how the degree to which you're interested. Then I say, listen, you're 18. I'll make you a deal, since you like philosophy, humanities. Take my classes, and I have colleagues around the city. Take their classes. You could be done with your bachelor's in about 3 years. You could then be done with your master's in about a year and a half, 2 years. By the time you're 25, you'll be done. If I'm still alive, I'll get you a job, part-time. You'll make $80 an hour. That doesn't sound good, man. That sounds fucking good. Yeah. You're a confused little kid. I'm giving you a GPS to life. But if you're not interested, I can't manipulate you. I can't coerce you. Now, I don't know if you're going to be a good teacher in the classroom. That's a shot in the dark. And you may, very much like a lot of my students, email me saying, I suck in the classroom. I want to walk away. I said, listen, it puts food on the table, pays your bills. Once in a while, you'll have an inspired moment. Don't be too greedy. Be okay with that. Go to the classroom, do the best you can, go home with a paycheck. What else do you want? And you'll be around ideas for the next 30, 40, 50 years. That's a good life. If I come to you as my power, you're wearing this armor like a Superman, and every time I try to manipulate you, it ricochets. I'm just not going to be interested in you anymore. Does that, Arvi? So a good amount of who and what we are really depends on the people we're around. Everybody has power over us. A scumbag would lead you into a gutter. So, good luck. Yeah. No? Anyone else before we talk about the story? You sure? Antoine.
If we were to adopt your position,
My what?
if we were to adopt your position, so like life is a tornado, as like characterized by fear of being forgotten and fear of death.
Yes.
That last class, and born with this innate beauty that is destroyed by life, like this tornado of suffering. Wouldn't that commit us to believe that having children, like taking someone out of non-existence, pushing them into this tornado, would that commit us to believe that having a child is an act of cruelty?
No. I mean, this is our fourth meeting, or fifth, or sixth, and all of your questions, and there is nothing wrong with that, revolve around, children and the awful things that us adults do to them. Number one, just giving birth to them. Can I tell you a story? Sometimes you buy a plot of land and then you build on it. Sometimes you buy land that has a house on it and then you have to remodel it. Okay. Some people are single, they read, they reflect, they observe, they pay attention to things, and maybe they come to a very bleak conclusion about life. They get to be 40. And by the time they're 40, they've built a house. It's a house filled with Sigmund Freud and Carl Jung. It's a house built by Plato and Socrates. Okay? That house can never be crumbled because it's been built for the past like 20, 30, 40 years. Then something happens to you, as it did to me. You become saturated like anything else in life. In other words, you've been around ideas for a while. You've been around the classroom for a while. You've been around a lot of different things. At a certain point, you find yourself in a coffee shop reading a book. And you look across the room and there is a woman, since I'm a heterosexual man. Okay? There's a woman. Now, you don't approach the woman reflectively. Very much like our conversation with Anna. There's just something about some people you like. You don't know why you like them. Okay? So you go to them. Can I buy you a cup of coffee? And little by little, gradually, things evolve. Then after 2, 3, 4, 5 weeks, you invite them to your place and they come to your place and you guys have food and then you lay together and you have now a relationship. Now, if the woman was trying to change me, it would be an impossible task. Because my house has been and had been built for the past like 20, 30, 40 years. You can't change me. It's finished. You can make minor adjustments. In other words, all of my bedrooms, interior bedrooms, they're all dark and bleak. And I like it. It's a source of creativity for me. But because I am married, I've done something, and I have 2 kids. I have made 3 additions to my house, 3 different bedrooms or living spaces. One is for my wife, one is for one kid, the other is for another kid. I will never invite my wife or my kids to the bedrooms that I created for the past 20, 30, 40, 50 years. It's not for them, it's for me. Just in case my wife wants to go out and have a good time, I say, okay. The bleakness is for me, not for them. Now, couple of things. There is another scenario, which is, let's just say Ashley. She's about 32. 25? She's about 32. She's married. She has a good life. Okay? Her life is built very much like my life is built. She walks in this class. My interior has enough power to disrupt her life. She can't go home and make like this tiny little bedroom for her companion. It doesn't work. It's only a matter of time before her relationship falls apart. Her companion is too small. These ideas are too big. There's a story told to us by Rumi. You know who Rumi is? Rumi is some poet. So one day, a camel. Do you know what a camel is? Those big, gigantic insects, right? There is this camel that is walking with a chicken, right? And grows to like the chicken very, very much, and says, "Hey, chicken, why don't you come to my house? We'll sit. I'll make you some tea." And the chicken says, "Fine, beautiful." So the chicken goes into the camel's house, and they sit, and they watch Rambo 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then Harry Potter, all the 8 shows. And the chicken goes home, very happy, very satisfied, very content. But there is a thing in the Middle East, and it's everywhere really, paid forward, right? That if someone has invited you to their house, well, you should do the same, invite them to your house. So one day the chicken calls the camel or texts him and says, "Yo, camel, why don't you come to my house?" Camel says, "Fine." "What are you making?" "Chicken soup." Right? So the camel starts walking to the house of chicken. Once the camel enters the chicken's house is destroyed. Camel is far too big. Plato is way too big for your life. Your life will get destroyed. You, on the other hand, you're a tiny thing for Plato's life. Plato can fit you. Now, I guess what I'm trying to say is, are you going to be in a relationship after your reflective life or before your reflective life? If you're in the business of reading books and thinking, whoever your companion is, you're going to contaminate them. Your only hope is they will have the capacity to be contaminated by the power of observation or reflection and what it does. And if you think about things really, really intimately and closely, you don't find very many sunlights out there. It's not possible. And you may come to the conclusion that Sigmund Freud came to, that my ideas, my writing is like Rembrandt, a lot of darkness and a tiny bit of light. The ideas of Buddha, they're not inspiring. They're not filled with light. They're quite depressing. I mean, the idea of Moses and Muhammad, taking a sword to people, what does it tell you about educating other people? Not too much, that people can be educated. Eventually, you just got to get rhythm. Story. Are we good? Children are great, man. You should have them, but protect them the best you can. And if you can, what can you do? What was the story?
8th century Persia.
The what?
8th century Persia. 2 boys. As far as we've ever gotten.
Were they Catholic? I'm sorry.
It's your story. I don't know. It might be.
So for those of you in this class who have trauma inside you, whether it's an addiction to a certain events that took place 30, 40, 50 years ago, or you're addicted to weed, porn, alcohol, maybe you just have some anger issues, whatever the case may be, this story may serve you well. In other words, it kind of tells you the ins and outs of how to change and how to transform yourself from A to B. And because I'm from the Middle East, by default, I'm an extremist. There is no gray area for me. It's just black and white. The gray area is only for very proficient people who have practiced piano for thousands of years and now sit behind this instrument, turn off the lights, burn all the music sheets and just improvise. That's the gray area. But to become good at anything, you just need black and white for the first 15, 20 years. So you have two young kids. One's name is Anna. The other is Lilac. Good friends. They call each other and they say, Kanye West is coming to town. I like to go hear his music. And of course, they say, yeah, let's do it. They buy tickets. Anna goes to Lilac's house, waits and waits and waits. And eventually they're both heading to the concert. As they're walking the streets, they hear this person screaming and shouting. And so Lilac says, Anna, hold up. Let me just listen to what this guy is saying. And Anna looks at Lilac and says, listen, the concert is going to start in 5 minutes. Let's go. And Lilac says, Anna, you go on ahead. I'll be there in like 5, 10, 15, 20 minutes. Before going further in the story, a couple of points here. The intention of Lilac and Anna leaving their house was really quite simple. They wanted to go listen to Beyonce or Justin Timberlake, that's all. Very simple. Stupid desires to have, but nevertheless, that's what they wanted to do. All of a sudden, they hear this man talking. Let's just say they hear the Buddha or Jesus Christ or Socrates giving a talk. Socrates is not going to say anything positive about Kanye West. And for some strange reason, Lilac happens to be profoundly attracted to what Socrates is saying. Number one, we don't really know how inspiration comes about. We don't really know how attraction comes about. We don't really know why someone who has the initial desire to go listen to Beyonce now says, I'd rather sit back and listen to Socrates, a 70-year-old man who says these awful things about human beings, about life, about politics. So just because some of you in this class may read a book, watch a movie, that may go against everything you believe in, everything you're pursuing in life, don't try to figure it out. Remember the Joseph that we talked about earlier in the class. There is this thing about us. I don't know why it's there. I don't know how it's there. I don't know why it goes to sleep, and I don't know how it wakes up. So Anna goes, and 10 minutes later, texts Lilac, I'm waiting for you. Where the hell are you? And Lilac says, half hour, give me half hour more. I'll be there. 45 minutes pass by, and Lilac is still there. Are you coming or not? What's going on? Nah, I'm not coming. I'd rather stay and listen to Socrates. Well, why? His phone has been turned off. 6 hours later, when Socrates is done rambling on and on and on about useless things, Lilac goes to him and says, I'd like to be your student. Now, one of the things you need to understand about Socrates is the following. He doesn't care about his marriage. He doesn't care about his kids. He doesn't care about making money. He cares about simply observing, reflecting, and expressing what he has observed. He wants to talk to people about things that are important for him, spiritual things, philosophical things, reflective things. And if you've paid attention to the past few meetings of this class, reflection always goes against life, always. So just in case you want to prove that God doesn't exist, just in case, human rationality and human reason are immense. Faith will not be able to withstand it. You will be able to checkmate someone who has faith in any religion. Because faith has a good amount of contradiction. It has a lot of Santa Clauses in there. Okay? Now, why would anyone be attracted to Socrates? Beauty. There is something about Socrates that awakens beauty, the power to reflect inside us, and we like it. Okay? If I was to use a different scenario, I'll give it to you this way. Life is boring. And for those of us in this class who have been in relationships will get themselves to a point where they become immensely boring. What happens when you get bored? You have an affair. Not because you don't love your companion, not because you don't love life. You just long to come to life. You long to grow wings. It's like you take your companion and say, let's read poetry. Okay? Now, Socrates knows that inspiration by itself is not enough. And now that you become attracted to him, he has a good amount of power over you. Well, not really, but when you go to him and say, I want to be a student, he says, okay. Well, you know, I will accept you as a student on one condition. In the back of our lecture hall, there are 4 bathrooms or 4 stalls. Why don't you go clean them? Clean the toilet bowls. I'm here to learn from you, Socrates. I don't want to go into the stalls. I don't want to clean toilets. I want to learn philosophy. No. Clean the stalls first. Good teachers always test us. Always. And they give us small tasks. Not big tasks, small tasks. Before you give your kid $100, give him 10. And then take him to Target. And see how he spends the 10. Is he going to buy a loaf of bread or a Sonic toy? If he deals with the $10 very casually, he's not ready for 100. If you've been asked to clean the toilet bowls, what's going to happen to your ego? To your self-perception? I am ready for philosophy. Well, you're in no position to discern that. Socrates is, but not you. You can assume that you're in a relationship, and time will tell you that your assumption is wrong. So you know what this kid does? He says, okay, you must be so attracted to Socrates that you're willing to sacrifice your life and your time and your energy and your youth, clean the toilets, simply because you're attracted to Socrates and you want to make sure that he's pleased with you. 2 years go by. And remember, whenever you think you're better than what you're doing, you're going to have conflicts inside you, and somehow you have to deal with them. And you either will continue to clean the toilets, or you'll just send an email to Socrates saying, you know what, I'm done. I'm not learning anything from you. Now, one of the things you need to understand about the symbolism of toilet bowls is that all of us in this class, myself included, my interior is filled with shit. But before I can clean the toilet that lives inside me, I have to first clean the toilets that's outside. This story, by the way, comes from the 8th century, from the Persian world. And the student we're talking about here, eventually he becomes this great, great, great religious teacher by the name of Shah Shuja. Should I continue the story, or have I bored all of you? Continue. 2 years pass by, and this young student named Lilac goes to Socrates and says, Socrates, you said 2 years. 2 years have passed by. All the toilets are clean and have been clean for the past 2 years, every single day. Okay. Behind the toilet is a kitchen. You need to wash the floors. Really? I can't come to the lecture hall and listen to you talk? No, not yet. You're not ready for it. What am I doing? You mop the floors. Every day. 4 or 5 hours a day. For how long? About a year. آینه داری چرا غماز نیست؟ چون که خاک از رخش ممتاز نیست. But if you want to know why you can't see your own reflection clearly, it's because the mirror is really, really dusty. You have to mop or clean the mirror if you want to see a good reflection of who and what you are. A year passes by, and Lilac goes to Socrates again and says, time's up. I am ready to come and listen to you. Now, one of the things you need to kind of understand about listening is what life does to all of us is that it puts trigger points or biases or prejudices or beliefs inside us. The things we are attracted to, all of a sudden we come to life. The things we're not attracted to, we just don't pay attention. Look at the people in this room. Some are playing with their phones, some are asleep, some yawn. And because I'm not attracted to people who don't listen, I just don't pay them attention. They are invisible for me. So remember, all of us in this class engage only in selective hearing. And Socrates knows this. And he wants to make sure that when he talks, students are able to listen to him and hear him and then listen to the things they are hearing. So most of the things I've said in this class are nothing but noise. Is it true that noise can attract us? Absolutely. Is it true that noise can inspire us? Yes. Does it mean that just because noise attracts or inspires us, pushes us into the realm of understanding? No. You just get excited. Socrates tells him the next task is to wash dishes. And that's one of the things you need to understand about Middle Eastern culture. When I invite you to my house, it is true that we're going to sit somewhere and have a conversation for 2, 3, 4, 5 hours. But before that, when you come to my house, I will give you tea. A couple of cups. And then after an hour, I will give you dinner. And then I will offer you coffee. And then we'll go to the back room and we'll sit and we'll talk. Laila can go to the lecture hall and sit and listen and eat with other people. He sits in the kitchen by himself, eats by himself. And for the most part, no one really cares who he is, what he is. He's given a task, washing dishes, and he does it. 6 months later, he goes to Socrates and says, I've done what you've asked. Can I now come to the lecture hall and listen? No. Now you make tea for all the people in the lecture hall. A year passes. Can I now come and listen to you? No. Now you wash the vegetables. Now you learn how to cook. If you haven't figured it out yet, let me just tell it to you. To learn anything that's worth learning, it takes a good amount of practical application. It's hands-on. You can't just sit somewhere and read books. It doesn't work that way. Any of you in this class have ever read the book of Job in the Old Testament? He is such a ridiculous man. He's stupid in so many ways. Even God in the book at the beginning is stupid. When you read the book closely, you know what God says? I love Job. He is righteous. He is sinless. And do you see Job, what he says about himself? I am righteous. I am sinless. So you have two egomaniacs, one God, Yahweh, and one Job. The only wise person in the book is Satan. Because Satan knows that Job is good only in theory, not in practice. Only Satan knows that when Job loses things, he flips. But here's the thing you need to know about human beings. If my wife dies, I will be sad, yes. If my kids die, I will be sad, depressed for a long time, sure. But if I go to the doctor and he says I have cancer stage 4, my sadness will be of a different quality. Job doesn't lament. You don't find 20 pages in the book of Job where Job expresses how sad he is for having lost his kids, for having lost his animals. No. His laments begin when he comes to realize that he himself is sick. Now he demands justice. Now he wants to know why. Why a sinless man is caused to suffer like this? And one of the things you need to understand before reading the book of Job is the wisdom tradition that comes out of the Jewish tradition. Good things happen to good people. Bad things happen to bad people. Good things don't happen to bad people, and bad things don't happen to good people. And that's what all good teachers do, hands-on. It's one thing to read lots of books about raising kids and sitting and having beautiful conversations with your companion. You're going to do this and you're going to do that, but just wait until you have kids. If any of you in this class have seen the movie Crash, you know, this young guy had just joined the cop academy, you know, and what does that guy, what's his name? Some guy who's been in the force for a while looks at him and says, you have no idea what you're in for. You have no idea what this job will do to you. And so the guy who's a scumbag becomes a hero near the end of the movie. And the guy who was a hero becomes a scumbag at the end of the movie. So just in case some of you are wondering, why do teachers create so many headaches for their students? Because teachers have something inside them. It's like you having slaved, you know, with your own blood and sweat, had saved $1 million and you got 2 kids. And you want to know which of your kids are worthy of the inheritance? Is it the one who's a drunk? Or is he the one who goes to the library and just reads books? Is it the one who's addicted to heroin? Or the one who's addicted to social reform? Anything that is valuable is not going to be given away cheaply. And this is so true of women. After a while, they refuse to lay with any man unless that man has been tested. That's a mark of a good amount of wisdom that has come from a good amount of pain. Actually, yes.
And stretching.
Yeah.
So what happens to Anna in that story?
Well, we're out of time. Sorry to say.
Nothing.
How about we continue the story on Thursday? Is that okay? Do you have any questions before we... Antoine?
I was wondering, is there a name to the chicken?
Chicken and camel story? No. There are 6 volumes to Rumi's Masnavi. And one of the things about ancient cultures, whether it's Africa or India or Iran, is that after a while you realize that the only way you can really talk to people is through indirect communication, i.e. stories. Linear conversation, I have a question, here's the answer, it doesn't usually work. And one of the nice things about stories, again, if you enjoy your own question, is that once a story is given to you, you will go home trying to figure out what the story does it really mean. And that engages you intellectually, emotionally. And what will happen is, as you go home trying to figure out what does the story mean, the chicken and camel story, is that you're not really thinking about the chicken and camel story. You're thinking about this class. And you're not really thinking about this class. You're thinking about the person who told you the story in this class. And consequently, your relationship and my relationship will just grow more and more and more and more. And then one morning, I'll come to campus around 4 in the morning and I'll see you outside of the building. What are you doing here? I miss you. And from that point on, I'll manipulate you. God bless you. Yeah, Katie.
Do you think the Tao is a more realistic interpretation of a God than the biblical God?
No. And I'll tell you why. I know many of you want to leave. Let me just give you a very, very quick answer. And I know you've asked this like 50 times in the past many days after class. There are 5 principles that you really need to pay attention to in Taoism. And the first and the most important is emptiness. You can't be empty if within you're formed. So there is water, there is emptiness, there is formlessness, there is childlikeness, and then there is this thing called creativity. And if we come back on Thursday and we can get done with the story quickly, you can ask your question if you're here, if I'm here, if you don't forget, if I'm in the mood. Then we can go through all the 5 different components of Taoism. And you will come to realize that the 5 components live in the story that we just talked about today. Remember, ink on paper, very, very easy. Very, very easy. Living what's on paper, enormously difficult. Anyone else before we go home? Yeah.
Just what are your thoughts on like an omnipotent God? Is that possible?
I think if you have a father who's been there, who's done that, and he can see his own reflection in you when he was a young kid, you have an omnipotent guy, a father in your life. He doesn't need to know everything that's out there, But if he sees you drinking, he can probably predict your future. If he sees you smoking, he can probably come to a relatively healthy conclusion as to how your future is going to be. If you're going out with a woman or a man who happens to be unhealthy in mind and emotions, he can probably tell you that it's going to be an abusive relationship. And you don't need 1-900 psychic. I think it really depends on how you wish to define omnipotence. You know, it's like all-knowing. Schleiermacher, I think he's a German philosopher. We'll talk about him, I don't know, one of these days, and his ideas about God. But until then, stay dry, take care, see you soon. Thank you, Anna.
Thank you.
Thank you.
See you Thursday.
Take care. Bye.
Did you take attendance?
You're fine.
Okay. I'll see you Tuesday.
Thank you. Hello, Avi.
Thank you very
Thank
much.
you. Thank you. Thank you. Hello, Dan.
I'm probably not going to be in class tomorrow.
Okay.
Hope my grandfather was a couple of moving.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Just wanted to give you a heads up.
Thank you.